Thank you so much to all of the patrons of the Nerdy Narrative. Join now to support the channel and help pick the books that I review. Link in the description below. What up, nerds? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Leslie, and today I am very excited to share with you my thoughts and opinions regarding the final book in the Glacian trilogy, Valley by Stacey McEwan. I have been so excited to read the conclusion to this epic fantasy romance trilogy, which I do want to stop and say really quickly. If you immediately tuned out because I said fantasy romance, while the romance is a major plot line, it's not the only plot line. There's so much action and adventure, political scheming. Just the themes alone are not particularly about the romance, but we'll get into that. I just wanted to say, don't shut your ears off, because I do think that even if you're not into romance, but you're into fantasy, every once in a while, you know you've picked up a fantasy book that had a really good romance involved. This is the trilogy you should give a try. Now, how it is that I came to read Valley and the Glacian trilogy, back in SPFB 07, one of the books in my allotment was a fantasy romance, which that's not something I normally pick up, but because it was part of my allotment, I read it. I ended up loving it and chose it to be my pick to go forward as a semi-finalist. Reading that book and loving it so much let me know that I've been missing out on a subgenre that I would really enjoy. Ledge, the first book in this trilogy, was my second book in this subgenre to pick up, and my gosh, did that turn out to be a great choice. If you have never heard of Stacey McEwan, she is really popular on social media, especially TikTok. She has such a great sense of humor. What began as her making a really funny video series of turning her husband into a fictional romance character led to her fans asking her to write one of these stories, and that's how we got this epic trilogy. Enough of all that. Let's get to the good stuff. Before I start talking about Valley, if you haven't read this series, I do have non-spoiler review videos for the first two books, which I will have linked in the description below. I'm going to do my best to keep it non-spoiler, so if you haven't read those two books and you're watching this review, you're able to get enough details to say, okay, this sounds like a great series that I want to give a try. But there may be some things, like if I mention a character's name, then that's going to let you know that they lived through the first two books. So if you want to avoid those types of spoilers, I would definitely say pause this, go read this trilogy, and then come back, watch the rest, and then message me, and we'll talk about what we agree on and what we don't agree on. All right, let's get into it. Valley is the end of Dawson's journey to free her people. This is the last-ditch effort to find a place where the people of the Ledge can live peaceably, alone, away from the influence of the queens, and away from the threat and the danger that is Glacia. The only thing they have to do is make it through the chasm. The problem with the chasm is it is pitch black dark. They don't know what's ahead of them, and they don't know what's behind them, but they are not alone. This series has always been high stakes, but in Valley, the stakes have never been higher. The themes that Stacey McEwan write about in this one, they've been prevalent in the previous books, but they really come to the forefront. Rage, guilt, overcoming your past, freedom. I'm just getting chills thinking about this book. This book was so good. I gave it 5 stars. This book was absolutely, blew me out of the water. I had high expectations. I had a whole lot of hope for what I wanted to happen, and I was not prepared. I'm not saying Stacey gave me everything I wanted, but she gave me what I needed. This was the best conclusion possible. Oh my goodness, here I am trying not to cry. This book was amazing. The characters are amazing. These are characters that are going to get off that page and into your heart, and you're going to carry them with you always. I can't wait to reread this series knowing how it ends. I think I'll be able to handle it better the second time through knowing the ending. Oh man. But what it was that made the themes so good in this book are its characters, their stories, their lives, their decisions, the traumatic events that so many of these people suffered through and didn't always come out on the other side of it, at least not undamaged. By the time I got to the second book and I understood what it meant to Dawson, anytime she would think about her den of girls, her home on the ledge where she lived with her mother and her grandmother and her sister, and it was just the girls, but it was her safe place for a small pocket of her life. This home was where Dawson felt safest. And all of the times that she would revisit this den of girls and her memories, by the time I got to Chasm, it really affected me. And by the time that she mentioned it in Valley, I would just immediately start crying. The character of Dawson Sabar is so impactful, and she means a lot to a lot of readers who have been following her story. And you can tell this character also meant a lot to the author. The dedication in Valley is so good. To all the wild-eyed, sharp-tongued, fire-breathing girls, Dawson Sabar was Stacey McEwan's way to write all of the rage that she holds inside of her, like we all do, and it's her way of putting it out on paper, giving it its outlet so that, in Stacey's words, she wouldn't end up in prison. But it's so much more than that. That's just the humor that Stacey has, which is all throughout her writing. So if you love some great banter, some sharp wit and sarcasm, you are going to love these characters. Something else that Stacey did so well, and it's not fair, is the found family trope. There were two characters in this trilogy. I told Stacey, if these two, something happens, I'm going to get a ticket to Australia. You're finally going to get me to leave the United States to come over there. I am going to somehow smother my fear of those super large spiders over there. I'm going to show up and we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to show you my inner Dawson Sabar if something happens to those characters. It's just not fair when a found family trope is written this good and nobody is safe. Nobody is safe, which is one of the things that I love and hate about Stacey's writing. She takes predictable plot lines, or they've been pretty predictable in past books that I've read, and makes them completely unpredictable. So many unexpected things happen. After reading the first two books, I knew there was going to be some twists and turns in this final book. I was not prepared for everything that was going to happen. The way that it happened, just, oh my gosh, the timing, the pacing, the atmosphere, just all of this worked together to make this one of the best books I've read this year. Now that I've mentioned atmosphere, I want to dig into that because this is one of my favorite things about this book in particular. So in Valley, we have all three of the regions that we have discovered in the past book, or we've read about, because this is the one where we explore the chasm. The previous two books, we are introduced to the Valley, which is sunshine and green. The people who live there are happy and prosperous. We have the people on the ledge, this mountain shelf that is on this mountain, and the only way off is if you jump into the chasm to your death. Now, the chasm is what we get to explore here, but these three regions are so different. They're so vividly described that you feel them. I felt the sunshine. I felt the happiness of the people who lived there. On the ledge, you could feel the cold coming off the pages. The chasm, darkness. It is pitch black dark. It's just ominous. It's depressing. I didn't like reading about the people when they were there. Just anytime you've ever been in the dark and you felt a moment of panic, accidentally let your imagination take over and it always imagines the worst thing possible. That's what Stacey wrote into this chasm, and it just made it so stark, so vivid that when Never mind, I'm not going to talk about that. That's for you to discover when you read the book. Another factor of what made this a 5-star read for me is Stacey's writing style. I've always enjoyed it. Valley was no exception. Her writing style is like poetry in motion, and if you like to listen to audiobooks, I cannot recommend these enough. This one, as well as the previous one, was narrated by Hannah Genesius. Did an amazing job. Just sounds so beautiful to listen to. Her voice is a perfect complement to the writing style and to the emotion of the characters and what is happening in the story. For any of you who were following my progress in my weekly reads while I was reading Valley, you know this book took me a while to read. It's not because it wasn't good or didn't have enough intrigue. It's because I didn't want to see it end. I didn't want to say goodbye to these characters, whichever ones might have made it to the end. With Stacey, she's a wild card. You never know what she's gonna do, but she does what the story needs to be done, not what we want. I love that, but it also puts me on edge, which is another reason why it took a while. I was scared to death what this author was going to do. I knew better than to expect a happily ever after. The best I could hope for was a "we're good for right now" ending, and oh my goodness, we're not going to talk about that ending. I'm happy with it, but I'm also I'm just hoping that there's something else that comes out of this world at some point in the future. But if I don't get it, I'm happy with what I do have. Of course, that's good news for those of you who don't like to start a series until it's finished. You can pick up your copy of Valley either in this gorgeous hardback, the audiobook, as I mentioned, which has a wonderful narrator. It's also available in ebook, and I'm sure a beautiful paperback copy is going to be on the way in the coming months. The book hangover that I'm still suffering from finishing this trilogy is tempered somewhat because I know that I'm going to get more of Stacey's writing next year. She has a duology that's going to be published by Saga Press. I've already been knocking on their door asking to get a copy of the ARC to read and review for all of you. The title of the first book in that duology is called A Forbidden Alchemy. It is labeled as another fantasy romance. I'll have the article linked down below that People Magazine ran about it when it first got announced, so you can check that out if you've read any of the books in the Glacian trilogy and you've enjoyed them. So I'm happy to report that more is on the way from this author, who is definitely an auto-buy author for me after the wonderful experience I've had reading her work in this trilogy. I'm gonna wrap it up there, y'all. I've done all of the gushing that I can about this series. If I haven't talked you into putting it on your TBR, I don't know what else I could say without spoiling it to get it on there. Thank you so much for watching this review. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button on the way out today. Remember, a good book is always worth sharing. Thanks again to all of the Nerdy Narrative patrons, with a special shout out to my Nerds Radiant: Chad, Mel, John, Gail, Amanda, Ashley, Star, Tara, Ann, Amanda, Andrew, Kate, Ev, and Sharon.